Brought to you by the Women's Alzheimer's Movement, the WAM Summit, the latest on women's brain health, Alzheimer's prevention, and healthy aging. In the next hour, you'll hear from award-winning journalist and founder of the Women's Alzheimer's Movement, Maria Shriver, who'll discuss the latest on women's brain health. From world-renowned doctors and scientists about how to increase your chances of preventing Alzheimer's, and from those diagnosed with Alzheimer's and their families about the early signs to look for. Here is your moderator, award-winning journalist and WAM supporter, Deborah Roberts.
Good evening if you're on the East Coast. We're so happy that you have all taken some time to join us today. I hope you're all well. I hope you're all healthy and safe during these very complex and challenging times. And if you are healthy, if you're fortunate enough to be healthy, I have to say the good news is you're probably going to live a nice long life. We are living so much longer these days, the average age about 78. But the difficult news is that as we age, there is going to be more for us to cope with. More of us are living and coping with Alzheimer's. 5 million Americans, 50 million people around the globe are dealing with Alzheimer's and other dementias. Those numbers are really just going to grow too as we all age as a population. And I have to say personally, I actually know. I lost my beloved mom, Ruth Roberts, to complications from dementia about 5 years ago. She suffered for many, many years. And watching that fog in her face and just the light sort of disappear from her eyes was something that was very, very difficult for me and my family. And sadly, now I have a sister who has been diagnosed as well. Not exactly early onset because she's in her 70s, but you know, as we age, it does feel sort of early. So this is a topic that just could not be more critical, I think, for all of us. Learning about Alzheimer's, dementia, and brain health is so very important for all of us. And you're going to find out why later on when you meet some people who don't fit that description that we think of when we think about Alzheimer's. I know the organizers of this event are so happy to have you here. And I know they're also very pleased to have the event sponsored by Biogen. Let's take a look.
Ciao, my name is Ivana Rubino, and I am the Vice President of Medical Affairs for Alzheimer's disease at Biogen. We are so proud of being part of today's summit. And on behalf of Biogen, I want to thank Maria Shriver and the WAM for all their incredible contribution and leadership in the fight against Alzheimer's. What you're doing to highlight the importance of brain health and to raise awareness on the impact that Alzheimer's disease has on women is just remarkable. We at Biogen know how devastating this disease is, and this is why we're working around the clock to contribute to the scientific progresses that are so much needed in this community. However, we know that we cannot do this alone, and this is why being able to work with passionate leaders like Maria, Deborah, and the WAM members makes this journey so meaningful, and hopefully this will take our mission forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that. Well, as I mentioned at the top, I have been touched by Alzheimer's and dementia like so many of you have been. And I know what it feels like to begin to worry and to wonder really about yourself and your own health. Fortunately, I can count on a fierce warrior friend for some advice and also for uplifting, Maria Shriver. She is quick to share her energy, her smile, her knowledge, and most important, her determination to see change happen. That is exactly why Maria Shriver actually started this organization, WAM. Just take a look.
It is a relentless beast.
I was 36 years old when my mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. It felt like my world was ending.
I mean, there's some days I don't even get out of bed till 11 or 12 o'clock. I think my kids feel like they've lost a little bit of me, and they're scared.
Our mission at the Women's Alzheimer's Movement is to understand why every 65 seconds a new brain develops Alzheimer's, why 2 out of 3 of them belong to women, and why women of color are at an even higher risk. By 2050, Alzheimer's will claim the minds of 16 million Americans. We are facing a national epidemic that has put women's brains at risk, and I believe that it will be women's brains who will turn the tide. WAM exists to move the needle for women and Alzheimer's. One way is by funding gender-based research at leading institutions.
WAM has absolutely been imperative to help us press the fast-forward button on Alzheimer's research.
We convene summits that gather the smartest minds to educate the general public about brain health and Alzheimer's prevention. We advocate at the highest levels for national and state Alzheimer's funding and partner with corporate and community leaders to develop policies that help families impacted by Alzheimer's. And now we're on the ground providing women-based services. In a historic first, WAM has partnered with the Lou Ruvo Center for Brain Health to open the Women's Alzheimer's Movement Prevention Center at the Cleveland Clinic. From the initial Shriver report informing the nation for the first time that women were more likely to get Alzheimer's than men, to every other media platform since, WAM has educated people about how to become change makers in their own homes, communities, and places of business. At WAM, we believe Alzheimer's can be stopped, but only if we invest in research. Only if we push government and business leaders to respond more urgently and creatively to this crisis. And only if we all take charge of our physical and cognitive health and the health of our loved ones.
We're going to beat this disease. We're going to protect our brains. We're going to figure out why this happens, and we're going to intervene early. That's the future of Alzheimer's.
The Women's Alzheimer's Movement is committed to ending Alzheimer's. The more we push, the more the needle will move. So join us at WAM and help change the future for women and Alzheimer's, one woman at a time.
Now you understand why, if Maria Shriver is involved in something, I want to be a part of it. This is a woman who does not take no for an answer. Hi, Maria.
Hey, Deborah, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. And when I saw that picture of your mom up there with you, I thought about my dad, and we're here together as children of Alzheimer's, right? And we're here because we both believe that we can make a difference in this fight, as is everybody who's speaking here today. So I'm so deeply grateful to be surrounded by so many warriors, tender warriors, I call them.
I've heard you say that, tender warriors. I like that expression. But Maria, one of the things that you represent is, aside from the war, being a warrior and having a tender heart, you believe in knowledge. And I remember we were having dinner one night and we were talking about, this illness. And I was sort of sharing about my mom, which you didn't know all the details about. And you alerted me to the idea that my being a Black woman left me a little more vulnerable, and that knowledge and somehow maybe a little bit of prevention can kind of give us hope and help.
Well, that's the point of this summit. Exactly that, is to educate people, to empower them with information, and to let them know that they need to know about their own health. They need to know about where they're vulnerable, about pre-existing conditions, and they need to be armed with information that can empower them to do something about taking care of their brain health. That's why I'm so excited that the people I'm going to be speaking with on my panel are here today, because they can bring us up to date on what's going on right now in these laboratories all across the country. They can talk to us about who's vulnerable and why, what makes you more vulnerable, what you need to know. And at the end of the summit, we have this great new piece of collateral that everybody will get that tells them what are the 10 signs they should look for, what are normal signs of aging, because I think that's what everybody is somewhat confused about. They're all like, is this a normal part of aging? Is this forgetfulness? Do I have Alzheimer's? People say it to me almost every day, like, I didn't know where I was. Does that mean I have Alzheimer's? And there's so much fear around this disease. And I'm hopeful that a summit like this will dispel some of the fear and increase the hope, will increase the education. And when you have knowledge, you feel more
Mhm.
powerful, you
Yeah.
feel less powerless, and you
Mhm.
can go into your doctor armed with information, and then you can do something. You can exercise differently, you can adjust your diet. I know you're really concerned with what you eat. You can
Mhm.
prioritize your sleep, you can adapt meditation, you can do cognitive training. There's a lot that we can do and talk about today that we couldn't a couple years ago, and that's
Well,
what's exciting.
well, I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say. And I know I need to get more sleep, but there's probably more I can be doing too. So I can't wait to hear what you have to say with your panel.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And the three people that I'm really thrilled that are here with us today are three people that are making a difference in the Alzheimer's space right now. Risa Sperling is at Brigham and Women's in Boston and also teaches at the Harvard Medical School. Roberta Britton is at the Center for Innovation and Brain Science at the University of Arizona and was one of the pioneers in women and Alzheimer's and studying that. And Mayrea Diaz-Santos is here at UCLA, where she is the director of the Hispanic Neuropsychiatric Center, and she will talk a little bit about what women of color need to know because this disease disproportionately impacts them. So let me begin with you, Risa. It's wonderful to see you again coming to us from Boston. When I got involved with Alzheimer's, you couldn't say Alzheimer's and prevention in the same sentence. Today you can. Why is that?
Well, because I think we now have an opportunity to intervene before people get to the stage that is so devastating to people and their families. And I think we're getting a handle on the really important science so that we can detect Alzheimer's disease before symptoms begin and prevent that memory decline that's so devastating.
So that's really interesting to people because so many people say, I don't want to know if I have Alzheimer's because there's nothing they can do to help me. There's no pill, there's no drug. So why would I want to be involved in early diagnosis?
Well, I think that we do have therapies coming that really are going after the underlying brain changes. And I think just like with cancer and heart disease and diabetes, we've really made a difference in those diseases by detecting it before people have symptoms. And I'm thrilled that we're finally getting to that stage and being able to look towards doing that in Alzheimer's disease.
So if somebody is here today at this summit and they've just been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, are you saying that you can actually slow that progression? You can make their future better than you could have 2 or 3 years ago?
I believe we can. I think the trials we're especially working on is trying to treat people even before they get diagnosed in the same way that, again, we would detect cancer or heart disease before people have symptoms. But I also believe for people who are suffering from this disease that we do have therapies that hopefully will help people slow the progression and allow them to live independently as long as possible.
Robbie, let's talk a little bit. This is something you and I have talked about for years, hormones and Alzheimer's. Now, when women hear hormones, there's a lot of panic that comes up, a lot of confusion that comes up. They think immediately breast cancer. Uh-oh, I shouldn't take that. Now we're hearing hormones are protective for the brain. They might help you in the fight against Alzheimer's. What should women know today about Alzheimer's and hormones?
So to begin with, 2/3 of persons with Alzheimer's disease are women, right? And so typically what was thought in the field for a long time is that it's because women live longer than men. And that's true they live about 4.5 years longer than men. What our research has shown is that it's not because women live longer, it's because the disease can start earlier. And that beginning of the disease can occur during the midlife transition of the menopause. And so that's where a lot of our work has focused is what happens to the female brain during this transition. And what our work has shown is that the female brain is very dependent on estrogen. It's promoting, all of the systems in the brain that actually reduce the risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. So one might consider hormone therapy, and we're close to publishing a research project funded by WAM that shows that hormone therapy can dramatically reduce the risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. And this actually is consistent with earlier studies. And where we're really focused on is well, which of those hormone therapies, which ones?
Right.
And
Right.
I can tell you if it has estrogen in it, it's beneficial. It's when it has estrogen plus something else, the progestin part, that changes that, that outcome. But so far, our work really shows that women who take hormone therapy for symptoms, not years and years after the symptoms have gone, you really have to introduce the hormone therapy at the time of symptoms that women can experience: hot flushes, depression, sleep disturbance.
So that's a very important thing. First of all, that's a very exciting thing you said, that with this new study that you're going to publish, but that you're actually saying there's definitive conclusion about estrogen as a protector to the brain. But when you start it is key. So many women have said to me, uh-oh, I went off of it. Can I now go back on it? Or I didn't start it till later. Does it still help me?
Yeah, so if a woman is having menopausal symptoms, that really tells you that the brain is experiencing that estrogen deficiency, and it hasn't switched to utilizing different fuel systems. So that comes back to a key element, which is sustaining metabolic health. And obviously,
Okay.
I know the movement development that you and others have championed is critical. So essentially, move it or lose it. The other aspect of this is that even if a woman is ApoE4 positive, has that risk factor for Alzheimer's disease, that's not a determinant. Actually, what we showed earlier was that women who were metabolically healthy and had the ApoE4 gene did not develop cognitive deficits. On the other hand, women who were at risk for type 2 diabetes or metabolic syndrome and were ApoE4 positive, that combination led to a decline in their cognitive capabilities.
So Robbie, let me ask you also, because, you know, when people hear hormones, they hear breast cancer, and you've done some research that we've spoken about tamoxifen and its effects. So I want people who might have experienced breast cancer, might be struggling with that, to know about that latest research.
Yeah, so we're very excited because obviously we were interested in whether breast cancer therapies, what was the impact on their risk of developing Alzheimer's disease, because they're an anti-estrogen in the breast. It turns out that in the brain is not the breast. And in the brain, these molecules, tamoxifen and exemestane, can act like an estrogen. And what we find is that women who were on tamoxifen or exemestane, these aromatase inhibitors, actually had a reduced risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. And we were thrilled for that finding. We're hopeful. We're going to be pursuing other studies and trying to understand how these molecules work in the brain. But our studies of humans, women, show that they reduce the risk of developing Alzheimer's disease.
And that's why I think these summits are so important, is to get that information out of the research lab and out to the women who could benefit from it, who might not know about it. Myreya, I wanted to talk to you when we talk about women and Alzheimer's disproportionately impacting women, but also disproportionately impacting women of color. For you, this is a social justice issue, is it not? And how we can bring this information, but better care, better health care, better education to women of color. How do we do that?
Absolutely. And I actually, I work with an amazing group of caregivers, all caring for a spouse or family member with Alzheimer's disease on Mondays. And I ask them directly, like, if I'm your voice, tell me what I can tell them. And they say, like, we need more education. We need more visibility on education. And what I have encountered with the program that we have developed here with social equity, social justice and equity, is that there's a disconnect between how we conceptualize in a medical setting Alzheimer's disease and the related dementias, and how the communities see the symptomatology. So when we're talking about education, what I have seen with the caregivers is that if the scientific information is not relatable to them, so they cannot see themselves in it. So we're developing that type of education with community partners.
What do women of color need to know, particularly when it comes to pre-existing conditions? So they need to know, like, if they have hypertension, does that make them more vulnerable? The connection between depression, type 2 diabetes. Can you talk a little bit about that for the women that are here listening?
Yes, absolutely. So I also did a clinical neuropsychology fellowship, and that's the reason I started working more with the community, because when you look at our communities coming to the clinic, we have like pretty amazing comorbidities: diabetes, hypertension, hyperlipidemia. We have renal problems, we have heart disease, we even have sleep apnea. And I think that providing the community with the symptomatology of those diseases helps them in their language identify that they might be undiagnosed or underdiagnosed. So that aspect of education and just providing the information to them in a language. I work mostly with Latinas, and it's that brings the Spanish. But beyond Spanish is how you convey that information so it's relatable to them. And the preventable aspect of all those comorbidities that increases our chances of developing Alzheimer's disease.
That's a really good point, Risa. Last time I did a story on you for the Today Show, we talked about getting people into clinical trials. And I know you're doing a trial called AHEAD right now. So we're trying to get more women into trials, but you're also trying to study more women of color, more diversity, because it's not just that women get this disease, but as Roberta's always said, it's precision. You know, what kind of women? Women are also different, right?
Absolutely. So one of the things that was really important when we started this new study, the AHEAD study, was to make sure that we could reach people from all communities. And so we specifically went to centers who have bilingual staff so we can test in Spanish. I think it's wonderful what you were saying, Mariah, about how important it is to make sure it's approachable and the material, what you're talking about, is not just in scientific terms, but in terms that people relate to. And I think that's critical. I'll also say we want very much to reach out to the Black and African American community. We're already learning in our prevention trials that some of the factors that put Black and African Americans at increased risk for dementia have to do with the interaction of Alzheimer's disease pathology and other factors. And so personalized medicine is where it's going to be, and in particular for women, because often it's a double hit and we need to be able to prevent that and make people's brains resilient before it gets a chance to take hold.
So real quickly, Robbie, just explain, because I think most people who are listening here haven't heard about metabolic health. So when they go to their doctor, you use the term. Explain to them what is their metabolic health and how do they ask their doctor about, am I metabolically healthy?
And so it's really, the brain is a one fuel system. It really operates on glucose. So to the extent that glucose metabolism and glucose control. So too much glucose actually obviously leads to a type 2 diabetes situation. So you want to keep your blood glucose levels well within the normal range. I'm sorry?
So to what number? What number should your blood level be?
A fasting blood glucose around 100 is normal. A little bit lower is good, but not too low, you know, in the 90 is real good for a fasting blood glucose. And essentially the great thing about exercise is that exercise drives that glucose from the blood into muscle, and where muscle will use it. It will also drive it into the brain, where the brain will use it. If it's sitting in the bloodstream, then that glucose tends to, you know, create problems. So part of what you want to do with exercise is to move that glucose into muscle, where muscle will use it, and into the brain, where the brain really will use it.
So hopefully that explains metabolic health. Some people probably haven't gone in and had that conversation with their doctor. I want to thank all of you so much for talking to us about hormones, about making sure that we include all populations in our trials, that we make our health care racially diverse, and that we put social justice always at the forefront of everything we're doing, and that we continue to educate about the connection between pre-existing conditions. And we've heard a lot about that in this era of COVID, right? About pre-existing conditions in COVID, but pre-existing conditions at Alzheimer's are also very connected. And it's not just like you develop Alzheimer's at 75 or 80. And that we now know that there is a lot that we can do to prevent Alzheimer's. Those two words didn't go together in the past, but there are things we can do to prevent that are within our power. So I want to thank you all so much for joining us today and continuing to educate us on this ever-changing path. Thank you all.
Thank you.
And now I want to go to, we talk about the researchers who are trying to give us the data and give us the path forward with this disease, but there are so many millions of people living with Alzheimer's today. And what is that like? They're so often very different than what you think. People so often think someone has Alzheimer's that they're 85 and it just appears as a normal part of aging. But more and more, we're seeing people in the primes of their lives, the primes of their career, in their 50s, their 60s, living with Alzheimer's and trying to work and trying to be out there talking about this disease so that we will better understand it. And one such person is Greg O'Brien. He's been a long time supporter of WAM. He lives in Boston. I was so grateful to get to meet him when I went there because he's a former journalist. He wrote a great book called On Pluto, Inside the Mind of Alzheimer's, which really takes you inside the journey, makes you understand what it's like. And he does it from a journalist's point of view, a reporter's point of view, and from a great man's point of view. And he has some words for all of us today. Greg?
Hello, I'm Greg O'Brien. I'm a grandson, son, and nephew of Alzheimer's, and now the disease has come for me. As an investigative reporter, I have studied this demon Alzheimer's. It is a cunning, calculating killer that can take 25 years to run its course. Alzheimer's stole my maternal grandfather, my mother, my paternal uncle, and before my father's death, he too was diagnosed with dementia. Now Alzheimer's has come for the next generation of our family tree. I was diagnosed about 9 years ago at age 59 with early onset Alzheimer's. After experiencing the horrific symptoms of memory loss, loss of place, loss of self, after clinical tests, SPECT scans, brain scans, revealed the diagnosis, which doctors say was exacerbated by 2 serious head traumas that I had earlier in life. I also carry the Alzheimer's gene APOE4. So where am I today? 60% of my short-term memory can be gone at times in 30 seconds. I don't recognize people that I've known all my life. I have a debilitating loss of filter, loss of self, incontinence, loss of place. The cognitive decline as I struggle to keep my head above the rising tide is intense. Then there's the depression that seems to have no bottom, that flirts with suicide. Alzheimer's may be taking over my body, but it can't have my soul. My late mother, Virginia, taught me in the throes of Alzheimer's how to speak and write from the heart, the place of the soul. She taught me how to live with Alzheimer's, how to walk in faith, hope, and humor. She told me the dying part comes later. So I will continue fighting while I can. And that's why I'm fully supporting the Women's Alzheimer's movement in its effort to raise research money for a cure. Only with science will we find a cure. Ernest Hemingway said it best when he observed, "The world breaks everyone, and afterwards some are strong in the broken places." So be strong in the broken places, and please support the good work of the Women's Alzheimer's movement. We need you.
Go, Deborah.
Wow. Greg, thank you so much. Such a powerful message. And it's such a reminder, too, that things are changing and we are learning so much more about people who are living with Alzheimer's who do not fit that description, as Maria said, of what we think the disease is all about. Well, joining me now to shed a little more light on that are two couples who really know firsthand what it is like to be diagnosed early, and I mean really early, with Alzheimer's. First, Pam Montana and her husband, Bob Lynchide. Lynchide or Lynchide? I'm sorry, Bob.
It's Lynchide.
Lynchide, nice to meet you both. And also Dan and Julie Jaworski. Thank you all so much for being here with us tonight, and taking some time. Pam, I'm going to start with you and Bob first. You were living a life that so many of us, only dream of, a very successful life in the tech world. Everything was going well. You both are having a happy marriage. Everything's going absolutely great until your diagnosis at age 58. What tipped you off? We all feel like we're sort of forgetting things. I forget my keys. I can't remember what I just came in this room to get. What was it that tipped you off?
Yeah, that's a good question. I worked for Intel. I don't know if you mentioned that or not, or if everybody knew that. I worked for Intel Corporation for 16 years. And I started struggling with the technology, which is not great when you're working for a technology company. And every Friday we had training. And my job was to kind of listen to that, take some notes, and then train my staff and let them know what was coming up and what we needed to talk to our customers about. And I initially, many years I just put a couple words down just as mind joggers. And then again, around 15, 16, I started having a really hard time remembering even what they were saying and the trainers were saying. So I basically was almost writing down word for word so that I could fake it with my staff in the previous week. And it was very difficult. It was very overwhelming. And, I used the word covering because I was covering with my staff. I didn't know what was going on, and I didn't want anybody else to know what's going on.
In fact, you were able to cover with Bob, really. Bob, you had no idea that she was having these memory lapses or anything like that until you went on vacation and you were together, all the time for a couple of weeks, and then you noticed something.
Yeah, it was clear to me when the questions began being repeated minutes apart that something wasn't right. Pam was commuting to Portland from the Bay Area. I was working and living in San Francisco, so we wouldn't see each other very frequently, but when we spent an extended period of time together, I clearly discovered there was an impairment that was going on with Pam.
And Pam, you knew it, but was it an aha moment for you, Bob, or Pam, did you kind of know that maybe this is more than just the average forgetting? Did you feel that?
I didn't know that because I didn't know what I didn't know or what I didn't remember. And so the time when we were together was the big aha moment because we were driving. And the only reason I remember this is because he's told it 10 times. We had to pull over. We were on Maui, we were on vacation. And he said and looked me in the eye and said, "Do you know you've asked me the same question 3 times in a row?" And I said, "No, where are we going to dinner?" Because I kept asking him, "Where are we going to dinner?" And so that was actually a huge aha moment because from then on, every appointment I went to and every, doctor's office, doctor's visits, Bob went with me. Because initially I was trying to figure it out on my own. And my neurologist told me, "Well, you don't look like you have Alzheimer's." So thankfully,
you don't look like you have Alzheimer's. That's interesting because you didn't fit the profile, right?
No, I'm not gray. I'm not gray and old and in a wheelchair and all that kind of stuff. So it was a long journey. I don't have time to go into all of it, but it took over a year, maybe almost 2 years to get official diagnosis through UC San Francisco Memory and Aging Center.
You eventually just reluctantly quit your job, and Bob, you actually quit yours too to be an advocate.
Yeah, what happened?
Why was that so important to you?
What happened was as we were struggling to determine what the diagnosis was, and so I took a leave of absence. And because we still hadn't gone through the proper research to find out, I decided I needed to step down. The job that I could not do, and also balance finding out what the issues were.
And Pam, I want to ask you, and then Bob, you, when you got that diagnosis, when you realized, you knew that this was Alzheimer's, how do you even take that in at that age?
initially, I mean, we were sad and we cried, and my family, our entire family and friends were devastated. But inside of me, like, I was really validated because no one believed me, and I knew something was wrong. And so, as hard as it was to get the diagnosis, it was like, okay, great. Well, now we know what to do. Now I'm going to have a new life. And so I just literally, after 2 or 3 days, just flipped and just dedicated my entire life to raising money. I was on the Northern California Board of Directors. I was on the National Board of Directors. I've spoken all over the country, got connected with my buddy Maria very early on. She's been amazing. I write a blog. I mean, I raise money. We just walk here in the East Bay and raised $35,000, which is kind of phenomenal during COVID and everything. So I don't have anything else to do. So I want to be the face of Alzheimer's, and I want to help us find a cure. And that's why I'm with clinical trials.
And help with the cause. Well, Dan and Julie, let me turn to you because you have a very different story. As we heard earlier, 2/3 of sufferers tend to be women, but in this case, Dan, it's you. Now, you were in your early 50s when Alzheimer's entered your life. You were a successful financial business leader. You were traveling the world. And unlike Pam, in your case, it wasn't the job that alerted you, but it was your family. How so?
Yeah, well, first of all, let me say go dogs to you.
Yes!
I know you'll appreciate it. My daughter will too. So
oh my gosh, a UGA guys. I'm a UGA fan.
Shamelessly throw that in.
I'm a UGA
yeah,
graduate.
but for me is a very different scenario where I know a lot of people get it. I had no idea. My family noticed things. I didn't notice anything. We were on a family trip abroad. And what happened was they told me that after we got back that I was asking the same questions about, when is this going to happen or that. But I think for me, it's like, I would tell people, it's like the people around you are either annoyed or they think you're not paying attention or you're tuning them out, that you're being rude. But for me, it was that my wife alerted me to this. And then we went down the path of contacting our primary doctor and going through a barrage of tests that Pam would know a lot about.
And Julie, I see you there nodding your head. So you were alerted. Was it just annoyance? Because I remember my mother was in her 70s and she forgot my birthday, and I was so annoyed. And of course, later I started to put it together. But I see you nodding your head. Were you just annoyed, or were you really suspecting that something was wrong?
I was annoyed for a solid 6 months. We have known each other. We met when we were 15 years old. I've known him forever. And for 6 months, I kept thinking, what is wrong? So I got to a point where every time I had to ask him a question or tell him something that I needed him to remember, I made sure his phone was put down. He wasn't looking at his computer screen, that he was looking straight at me. And then I was still having to repeat these things. And then the trip overseas, and the kids, after the trip was done, the kids telling me, Mom, something's just not right. That was some of my validation that, okay, I'm not the one that is just seeing it. Other people are seeing it as well.
Now, in the case of Pam, they both now are just working and being each other's advocate, but you didn't quit your job or anything like that. What are you doing to accommodate? What did you have to do? What changes did you have to make in life to accommodate? Because to look at the two of you now, I just think you're just the average couple. Everything's fine. What did you have to do to accommodate this?
I think one big thing that we did after the diagnosis did come down, we made sure that we had, he writes everything down now. Well, maybe not everything, but a lot.
Yeah, almost
so
everything.
Most things, so that he doesn't forget appointments or different things that we've talked about. A lot of it is writing down. And I work part-time, but I have not quit that job. I kind of need that outlet too. So
we did all the legal and estate stuff, because there's a whole series of things that can go, if they go wrong, that better to do them early.
Of course, you have to make these decisions early. But in the meantime, you're living your life. You're training for an Ironman?
Correct, I am. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. How do you manage all of that with sort of the complications of sometimes being forgetful and all that comes with this?
Right. I feel pretty good. I mean, I feel really good right now. I feel like I'm in close to the best shape of my life. I'm really prioritizing kind of all the levers that I can pull: diet, exercise, sleep, brain engagement, and meds. So my goal is to try to be the first survivor. And so I don't have many levers, but the ones I have,
You and Pam.
yeah, yeah, I'm with you. I'm going as hard and as strong as I can, and we'll just see how it goes.
Well, Pam, you're very conscious too about diet and exercise at this moment.
Oh, yes, always have been. And, I knit, I do yoga, I make lists of people to talk to. I'm busy. I don't like being at home, and COVID's been very, very hard on me. And I definitely have declined since March, my short-term memory, but I'm making
You've noticed a difference since March?
Huge, huge.
I think it's really important that if you can do all these things, you can delay it. If nothing else, if you delay it, that buys you time and technology. And you're presenting sponsor here, Biogen. This is a $30 billion company with 7,000 people, and I thank them for sponsoring this, but we have creative people like that out there. So if you can do things that delay it, that buys you more time, which means there are just more chances for survival.
Right. And Pam, you're involved in clinical trials as well, right?
I am. I'm in my second one with Eli Lilly, and it's looking at tau. And the first one was with Roche, and it was looking at amyloid. So I was getting the placebo when the Roche trial got, after they stopped it, they were able to tell me. So that kind of made me feel good that, I was getting the placebo, and that's no big deal if they canceled the trial. And like I said, right now I'm on Eli Lilly, and it's double blind, so I don't really know.
Bob, to look at you and Pam, and to also look at the other couple, I mean, people would look at you all and think, wow, you kind of give me hope, but then it also would scare a lot of people too, to think that they're going to be living with something, or potentially could, this early in life. What do you say, Bob, to others out there who might be thinking that this could be in their lives? They're now putting some things together. What do you say to others who might wind up being either a caregiver, an advocate, or possibly facing the same grim news that you faced?
Well, frankly, Deborah, we mourn for those that don't acknowledge that the disease is there. We were bound and determined once we got the diagnosis that we were going to do everything possible to be part of what Dan says, to be part of the cure, to be walking around dealing with this issue that's so profoundly impacting society. We feel we were chosen for this. And we think that the action, I went back to work shortly after we got the diagnosis. I've been a business advocate for my entire career. I've never once advocated for something that was life or death. This is, and we're deeply committed to every cause there can for brain health, for women's Alzheimer's movement, and the clinical trials that come along with it.
Right. Well, if you were chosen, I tell you, you're great advocates. Dan and Julie, let me ask you two to help us wrap it up. Give us some thoughts here on what it is like day to day and sort of living with this, and the conversations that you're having, and also maybe the conversations about hope.
Well, I do think hope is everything, and especially right now in this COVID world that we are living in. But I also think that every day is a blessing. And, I know that Dan was diagnosed very early, but I think Maria had said it earlier, knowledge is power. The earlier we know, the more knowledge we have to combat it, to keep going forward. And we were already eating healthy and exercising to begin with, but this just cements that people really make sure that you're taking really good care of yourself along the way.
Well, you all give us great hope. And I have to tell you, Dan and Julie, it's great seeing you. I can't wait to hear about that Iron Man. Right. And thank you for the Good Dogs reference.
You're all invited. All invited. October 9th, 2021 in Hawaii. So
good.
Come join me.
Maybe we'll all be joining each other and actually spending time with each other by then. So Pam, Bob, Dan, and Julie, thank you all so very much. I mean, you really do give us hope, and we wish you all very much the best with your families. Maria, this really does
Thank you,
give us
Deb.
a very different picture, doesn't it?
Yeah, is that Al or is that Nick? I don't know. No, Nick. Okay.
Nick. My son Nick is here. Do you want to say hi to Maria Schreiber and all the folks who are here?
Hi, Nick. How are you? We're talking about family. I mean, so nice to see you. Thank you for joining us, sweetheart.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay,
this is what happens
when
you're working from home.
Yes, I know.
That's okay. but I think, that was so, I mean, both of those couples are so inspiring. And what I liked, the point where Bob was saying, I'm pulling every lever that I've got. And I think that all of us can be pulling every lever that we've got, whether we've been diagnosed or not. I think that's really what I'm hopeful people take away from this summit, is that there are a lot of levers that are out there right now that we can all pull. He's talking about exercise. He's talking about healthy eating. He's talking about sleep. He's talking about cognitive training. We talked, Pam was saying that she felt that she had digressed during COVID. And we've been seeing stories lately about people in nursing homes who have been dying from isolation. Connection is a big part of keeping your brain healthy. Being curious, having a social group, even if it's on FaceTime during these difficult times. But there are levers that we can all pull. And that brings us, I think, to this 10 things every woman should watch for as she ages, Deborah, that we're giving out to everybody who came onto this summit, because so many people came to me over the years and said, I don't know what's normal. I don't know what to ask my doctor. I don't know what the levers are that I can pull. I don't know what's just like, I forgot my keys, or did I take that medicine already this morning? Or should I be concerned about it? And this, I hope, will help women when they go into the doctors to understand what's typical and what you should talk to your doctor about.
Well, you lay it out here so clearly, and it really helps, because you're absolutely right. We all do get sort of confused about what we should worry about, but to have like 10 very specific things here. I mean, we all know about forgetfulness and all of misplacing items, but personality changes, attention span, all of these things. I mean, there's so many details here that you talk to your doctor if, Maria. I think this could be a real lifesaver for a lot of us.
Well, I hope it will be, because it says typical aging may look like this, but talk to your doctor if it's this. So it distinguishes between the two. And I think, look, so many people are scared, right? People in their 50s, and we have more baby boomers aging forward than ever in the history of our country. And our country is getting older. And this is an issue that we should all be thinking about as family members, talking to our kids about. It's not only just getting our financial houses in order, but talking to our kids about what we want and how do we want to age forward, and doing everything we can right now so that we're in the best possible position to age forward as gracefully and elegantly as possible. And the other thing that, I remember several years ago, when I first met Pam, Deborah, she said to me, I don't want people to think there's something I could have done to stop getting Alzheimer's. So I think that's also a really important thing for people who have Alzheimer's. They're like, I don't want to be shamed into thinking I didn't exercise or I didn't eat right. But we're learning these things that new now, right? And when I first got involved in Alzheimer's, when my dad got diagnosed, nobody talked about lifestyle modification. Nobody talked about being able to look at the brain or talk about hormones as neuroprotectors. This is all new. And so I'm hopeful that what we know now will help us in the future, and that people who are in their 30s and 40s and 50s will begin to adopt what I call a mind style lifestyle, a brain healthy lifestyle. Because, we know a lot about push-ups and sit-ups. Don't know what it is that will keep this performing at its kind of best capacity, I guess.
Right. I think that is so critical. And you and I have talked a lot about that, some of the things that you can do to try to save. But what I really took away too from these two couples, from Pam and Bob and Dan and Julie, just that support too, that family support. I mean, Bob being an advocate for her. And I'm sure times are not easy. I mean, we saw like a very nice picture of them tonight, and I'm sure there are many frustrating times, but that family support, I could just see that, how that made such a difference in both their lives. And, that's not always easy for people.
No, and there are so many millions of people who are alone who don't have that. I'm the chair of the governor's task force out here in California, and we are providing recommendations to him in the next coming weeks about how California as an aging state can better prepare. And one of the things we've learned is that there are so many people, women and men, who are in their 60s, their 70s and 80s, who don't have any family members and who have no one to care for them. So I really think, and this is a larger thing, that we have to have a larger conversation about honoring aging, respecting aging, caring for those who are aging, and it being not just a family responsibility, but a societal responsibility that we think about, people as they age, and we revere them like many other cultures do, so that people don't have to worry that they're all alone and there'll be nobody there to care for them. I did a conference last week, and many people said, I'm afraid to grow old because I'm afraid to be alone and that there'll be nobody there. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity for us all to step up and be supportive of our fellow citizens as they age forward, to be supportive of those who are struggling with Alzheimer's, not to shame people. Many of the couples that I've met said that, people stopped inviting them over after they mentioned that they had been diagnosed. Yeah, because they're afraid. People are afraid, right? And so I think the more we can dispel the myth, look at, he's doing an Ironman. I couldn't do an Ironman if I could barely run to the corner. My God, my chips, I guess. But I think, that's to kind of define, like there he is, he's pulling all his levers,
Right.
And so I think the more people changing the face, changing the story, changing the narrative. And there are people out there, like Greg, like Pam, like Dan, they want to be survivors of Alzheimer's. Right. They want to be out there saying, I'm a survivor, I'm thriving, I'm okay. Right. And that's a really different message.
Well, you're absolutely right. And as we said before, you have a personal connection. I have a personal connection. I mean, watching my mother go through this, and my mother was in her late 70s and 80s when this disease really progressed. So in some ways, she was the face that what we sort of think of. But then my sister, who was in her, early 70s, and I started to see the personality change. I mean, I really, of course, want to pay attention to myself, as a woman, as a Black woman, and try to, do what I can to try to not only stay healthy and stay ahead of it, but I really want to know, I want to learn. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us.
And you can pass on the information. That's all of us are reporters of this information. So I'm hopeful that all the people that signed up, more than 1,000, 1,200, 1,500 of you, that you will take this information that you got today and pass it on to 5 other people and let them pass it on, because so many people have pre-existing conditions. So many people don't even get to the doctor. So many people haven't been to the doctor during COVID, and they don't realize the connection between something they may have and how that might be putting them on the path to early Alzheimer's. So I think the more
WAM
we
is
can
doing
all
a great
share
job.
the information.
Yeah, WAM is doing a great job of that, Maria. And this little card, 10 things every woman should know to watch for as she ages, I think will be critical for so many of us, something that you can have this tangible to look at. And I'm so in awe of all the work that you all are doing. And I'm just honored to be a part of it, a small part of it, from time to time.
Deborah, I want to thank you so much. I've known Deborah for many decades. I won't say how long. I've known her husband.
No, don't.
For many, 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 many decades. And I just want to thank you for taking time out. I know dinner's on the table, so I just want to thank you. I want to thank all of you who bought a ticket to come to this today. I know you came because you wanted to learn. I hope you did. I know you came because you want to be empowered and you wanted to take control of your own health. So I hope you got information today that makes you feel validated. That word came up a lot, that this was time well spent for you. I want to thank all the sponsors who sponsored this, because without them, we could not do the work that we do. And all our participants, all the researchers, to our family members, to everybody there, thank you for sharing your story, sharing your research, sharing your time. I'm deeply grateful to the work you have done in the past, to the work you are doing, and to be in this, I don't like to call it a fight, but it is a fight.
It is a fight
with all of you. It is a fight. And to be in this with you really gives meaning to my life, gives purpose to my life. It gets me up and out of bed every day. And my kids who are concerned that I'll never find a boyfriend if I keep talking about Alzheimer's, they're like, just stop, mommy. But I'm like, I can't stop. So I want to, so let me just finish by thanking Biogen, the Schnick Foundation, Rivet Revolution. They have these beautiful bracelets that everybody can buy. Belmont Village, Bank of America, Home Care Assistant, Lily Sarafin, a great friend of ours, and the Aging Life Care Association. I hope I got everybody there, because these things would not happen without every single sponsor and every single participant and every single person who bought a ticket. So thank you. We hope to do more of these. We hope that you enjoy them. And we thank you all. And I hope everybody goes and has a healthy dinner.
I do too. Thank you,
Thank
Maria.
you
Maria
all.
Schreiber, this
Thank
was
you,
such a pleasure.
everybody.
Thank you all, everybody, and have a good night.
Good night. Thank you so much.